Welcome to All the Mods 10 to the Sky, the skyblock version of All the Mods 10. Watch as I work my way from this simple island scavenging for scraps, into massive resource generation, giant reactors for massive amounts of power, cheesing some of the toughest bosses in the game, and combining both magic and technology in order to craft the All the Mods star in nearly 10 hours. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. Now let's get right into it. The start of any speedrun, with hope on the horizon and a feeling of nothing that can go wrong. Just listen to how innocent he is. I mean, what could go wrong? He's got a shovel. Oh my gosh, I need to move it back one. No! No. Oh god, he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. Let's just get this over with. Starting off, the game puts us in a little spawn area, and of course we're going to abuse this. So let's grab these conveniently placed logs in the floor, because mining trees is for noobs. Let's also grab a little bit of this dirt, as well as these bookshelves for some books. Now we just gotta head to our island by using the command, and just like that, we've made it home. We got a couple things to do now that we're here. First, we're going to need a couple seeds, so let's break the grass that it gives us. Now we just want to clear out this area, as this is where we're going to place most of our things. Even our greenhouse is going to give us a bunch of logs, so we won't need too many trees if we play our cards right. It's also going to give us some starting food with carrots, which will quickly grow a few more of them, as we're going to need a little bit of food soon. On the other side of the island is a ton of stone and cobblestone, so let's first craft up a crafting table on a stick. That way we can do all our crafting on the go. Let's make a quick wooden pickaxe so that way we can get our first bits of stone. And now that it's served its purpose, we can make our stone pickaxe. And while we're here, we might as well clear out the rest of our inventory of the junk. Now let's mine up all this stone and cobblestone. That way we can get a quick head start. The mod pack also lets us repair our pickaxe with just some cobblestone. Hey you! Yeah you! While this guy's mining some cobblestone, you guys should subscribe to the channel. I mean, look at that number. 4%? What if, hear me out, we made it 5%? Maybe? Whatever, back to the video. Now we can take some industrial hemp seeds that we got from the grass earlier, and we'll use it to replace these beets. The normal progression has you use silkworms on leaves in order to get some string, but we'll actually be using this hemp fiber to craft some instead. With this string, we're going to turn them into some meshes, of which we're going to need 9 of them. Let's also craft up 9 hammers, which we can compress into a compressed hammer, and we can use that to break down some compressed blocks, such as cobblestone to gravel. Now we're going to need some sieves for those meshes, all of which we're going to place next to each other. You can have up to a 5x5 of these, but a 3x3 will be just fine. Now let's add our meshes into those sieves. Let's also decompress some gravel as we're going to sieve it soon. We'll also want to break down the gravel into some sand and dust, as we'll be wanting to sieve those as well. Let's add some storage on top of these sieves, as it's going to get a lot of resources soon. Now we'll just use a simple auto clicker to sieve some stuff real quick. Sieving dust will give us a few things, and the main ones we're going to want are some bone meal, some redstone, and some glowstone. Gravel is going to get us most of our basic ores, such as copper, iron, and osmium. Let's use some of that redstone to make some basic upgrades for our chests, which is very helpful as it'll let us quickly store items of the same type. And now that we have some flint, we can upgrade our meshes from string to flint. This will give us some slightly better chances of ores, as well as unlocking some new ones. We can right click some grass blocks in order to get some more stone now that we've used all of ours. And we'll also want to make a furnace real quick, that way we can start smelting some of these ores. It'll just cost us 4 ore chunks for each ore we want to craft. And while those are smelting, let's go ahead and get some more cobblestone going. You may also notice it's giving us a bunch of different types of pebbles, which we'll need a few of those in a minute. For now, we just need some stone, as our first main goal is to get a cobblestone generator. So let's smelt up some copper as well, and then start sifting through some sand. We'll make a wooden barrel and put it over by the water, and this one's going to have a few uses. First off, we're going to need to fill it with some water, and now we can use some sand to make some clay. Let's use some compressed sand so that way we get 2x compressed clay. We'll then use that bone meal from earlier to make some porcelain clay, which we'll use to turn into an unfired crucible, and toss that in the furnace. Over in our quests, we can go to the Railcraft tab, and we'll use that to claim some steel ingots. We'll use that steel to make a steel casing, and we'll use that steel casing to make a superheating element. And by placing this under our crucible, we can make lava at 60 times the regular rate. Just be sure to keep filling up the crucible with some cobblestone. And now that we have some lava, we can finally make a generator. And now to make a complicated little setup. Here we'll eventually be making some netherrack, some obsidian, cobblestone, and some endstone. But for now, we just want to get our cobblestone generator going. That way we can start automating some processes. This generator is very powerful. It'll make 64 cobblestone every cycle. And now that we got plenty of cobblestone going, we can start sieving as much as we want. This does mean our chest is going to fill up pretty quickly, so a tier 1 stack upgrade will do for now. Let's also go ahead and make a crafting upgrade, which we're going to add to our general storage chest, which will make crafting a little bit easier. Next up, we're going to head into create. That way we can start making some bulk smelting. We're going to use a water wheel to power our fan, which we'll go ahead and set up now. Just make sure that the water wheel is spinning in the correct direction you'll need. We're going to take a quick detour and make a compression upgrade, which we'll add to our cobblestone chest. This will allow me to grab any compression level of cobblestone that I need, as well as add a ton of storage to the chest. Now we'll have to craft some iron plates in order to make our fan. The last step is then to set it up where it's blowing through some lava. This will cook bulk items very fast, but we'll want to limit the stack size of the items using a chute. That way we can cook as many items as we want at the same rate. Now back to sieving. We can double our ores with an ore hammer, which will then quickly cook in our smelter. Just be careful not to touch the flames. And now we have enough iron to upgrade into some iron meshes. So let's go ahead and replace those. Now when we sieve some gravel, we'll have a small chance of diamonds. Taking that dirt from earlier, let's sieve that, as we're going to need some sugarcane and mycelium seeds. The sugarcane we can just plant for now, and the mycelium seeds are going to go underneath our barrel. This will slowly turn our water into witch water. We also now have enough gold to upgrade our meshes one more time. And let's go ahead and upgrade our chests, as we're going to need lots of storage. Now we can go ahead and expand our generators, so let's make some obsidian with a barrel, and we'll place it under where our next generator will go. And now that we have some diamonds, let's make a time in a bottle. Now let's craft up those last 2 generators, that way we can start getting everything going. Our second generator is going to be making some endstone, which is going to need some glowstone placed underneath it. Now we'll just need to place some water for our obsidian generator, craft up an extractor and place it on our gravel, that way we can start generating some netherrack. And finally we'll want to grab that witch water that we were making earlier, and place it on the other side of our generator, that way we can start making some endstone. We'll just have to clear out the cobblestone that I was accidentally making for a little bit. We can then break down some of that compressed endstone, giving us some crushed endstone, which when sieved will give us some Eyes of Ender as well as some Ender Pearls. Now we can finally craft up an item collector, which we'll upgrade into a tier 2 just in case. Now by placing it on our chest, we no longer have to pick up all these items. And now we're almost complete making this automated. The last thing we'll need to do to fully automate it is to make some goo, which we'll place down on the ground and feed a little sugar, in order for it to activate and start converting some blocks for us. While those are going, let's sieve up a little more gravel, and upgrade our meshes to the diamond tier. We won't be able to make netherite meshes for a little bit, so this will be nearly the max value that we'll get from sieving. Let's speed up that goo a little bit, that way we can finally convert our iron into some ferric ore. And just for fun, let's upgrade our pickaxe to diamond. Now we can just mine the ore, which is going to get picked up by our item collector, and we'll just need to cook it up. Using this, we can make a simple clicker, which will end up automating our entire process. Let's just go ahead and make a wrench first, that way we can make sure the clicker is facing the right direction. We are now going to need some pipes as well as some pipe upgrades. Finally, we'll just have to pipe in whatever we want to sieve into the auto clicker. Let's also make another compression upgrade, which we'll put into our sieving chest. That way we won't have to convert between our compressed variants. Now let's just make a little bit more gravel, which we'll toss right into the chest. And now we have queued up almost 40,000 gravel to be sieved. Just be sure to watch out for the locals. He's got a shovel. not even close. But because these guys are going to start to annoy me soon, let's place down a mega torch to stop all spawns in the area. This also means that we're now free to expand our island without worrying about mob spawns. And we're going to need a lot of room, so let's expand it a bunch. And now that that's all set up, we're going to need to increase our storage even more, so let's craft some upgraded stack upgrades. And by the look of things, we definitely needed it. Now let's craft up another compression upgrade for our sieving chest, that way we can add some sand in there as well. We're also going to need to go up a tier on pipe upgrades, that way our sieves are running at maximum potential. With that set up, let's start sieving some sand. With resources coming in, it's now time to make some machines. First up, let's make an infuser, which we'll power with an iron generator. We can optionally use redstone to power it temporarily, but this will save us more redstone in the long run. With this, we can now start making some alloys. Then we'll craft up some circuits, which we'll use both to craft a wind generator. That way we have at least some half-decent power generation. Now let's craft up some cables so that way we can move everything to our new area. And let's not forget to power up that iron generator. Next up on the list is getting some quartz. To do that, we're going to need to crush up some netherrack, and then we'll just manually put it through the sieves. Now let's grab out that quartz and some charged quartz. Toss those in some water with some redstone, and now we have some flux crystals. We're now one step closer to setting up an ME system. We can make a storage controller, which we'll attach to our chests in order to connect it to our ME system later. And by upgrading our chests one more time, we can add a compacting upgrade to automatically craft our ores. Just be sure to add whatever you want compacted into the filter. Next up on the list, we're going to need to make some circuits. So first up, let's make a couple inscribers and add them to our new area. And in order to make some circuits, we're going to need some silicon. So let's craft up some quartz blend and throw that in our smelter. We're also going to need to craft some circuit presses, which will take an iron plate, some skystone dust, and whatever material we use on the press. And we'll be sure to craft 2 silicon presses, as we'll need one of them in a recipe in the future. But in the meantime, we can use both of them to compress some silicons pretty quick. Now let's go ahead and start crafting a bunch of different circuits. Then all you have to do is combine them together with redstone, and we'll get some completed circuits. First up, let's craft some ME controllers, which we're going to need quite a few of, that way we can get a bunch of channels out of them. Then we'll just be sure to power them with some cables. Now we're getting pretty close to having it up and running. We just need to craft up this ME crafting terminal, as well as a storage bus that will connect to our controller. Now the final touches are just to cable it all together. Let's also connect the ME bus up to our sieve storage. And we'll set this one to extract only, that way we don't get unwanted stuff in our sieve chest. Now that we have everything up and running in the ME system, we're going to crush up some deep slate, and throw that in the sieve, in hopes to get 16 uranium ore chunks. Oh, 5. 5 is not quite 16, which means we're going to have to start making some more deep slate. But before that, we are going to need to make a foundry, so let's start cooking up some fire clay into fire bricks. This is very similar to a Tinker's Construct forge, which means we're going to have to craft up quite a few different pieces. Now all we have to do is build the foundry. The bottom blocks of the foundry are going to need to be some heated coils, which for now we can only make the liquid ones. Which is fine because we can easily make plenty of lava. We can then craft a storage tool, which we can use to link any chests that aren't directly connected to the storage controller. I don't quite recommend this, as it means our storage will randomly put items into any of these chests. Anyways, let's move over our lava generation. And of course this falls into the lava. Quite tragic, but we can just craft up another one. Now we can set it up over by our foundry, and feed it cobblestone directly from our storage using an interface. And now that we've got lava generating, we can directly pipe it into our foundry. And with our smeltery all set up, it's time to get back to making that uranium. So let's crush up some more deep slate and throw it through the sieves. We're now at 12, which is almost enough. And for now, we can just add those into the smeltery. And back to getting some deep slate. How lovely. You know the drill by now. Crush up some cobble deep slate and throw it into the sieve. Surely this time we'll have enough. It's about a 10% chance per crushed deep slate. 1? I got 1 from that? Well, back to the grind. Oh my gosh, so close. That definitely gave it to me. Oh my gosh, it did. Finally! Surely we don't need to crush any more deep slate in the future. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna melt that uranium into the foundry, and then let's get distracted on something else. Here we're creating a quarry card, as well as a builder. This will be used to automatically harvest some geores that we'll make. Speaking of which, we're gonna need to expand our platform. That way we have enough room for all the geores we're gonna have in the future. Now let's just configure our quarry to mine the selected area. And we'll place an interface on top of it, which will put any of its outputs into our storage system. Now let's finally grab that geore, which was made by pouring molten metal onto the compressed sand. Let's then increase the growth speed of the crystals by making some growth accelerators. We'll eventually upgrade these growth accelerators into their advanced versions, but for now we have no way to power that. Finally, we're going to make a filter for our quarry. That way it mines only fully grown clusters. Now we just set it to run forever. And with some uranium going, we can finally make a reactor. So let's smelt up a bunch of coal first, as well as a ton of iron. Let's break down all that graphite into some bars, which we'll use to make some basic reactor casings. We'll also need some reactor rods, and an active power tap. Now let's start building out that frame. Let's place in that solid reactor port, as well as an energy tap. Now we just add in a controller, and start filling the reactor with some fuel rods, which we'll cap off with some control rods. And with that, our reactor is complete. Now we'll just need to add some fuel. Now we want to get some ancient debris, so let's crush up some blackstone and put it through our sieve. A fun thing we can do is also make a sink, which if we connect a storage bus to, will give us infinite water inside our ME system. We'll make a mechanism crusher, which will be used for a couple recipes soon. We can also add some basic installers to upgrade our machines. Our next big goal is to set up some autocrafting. So to do that, we're going to want to make some entro seeds. We can then place those entro seeds on some flux blocks in order to start growing some entro crystals. Our goal here is to get 32 entro crystals and crush them into dust, as once we do that, we can start duplicating them with some flux crystals. Next up on the list is to make our storage wireless. AE2's wireless storage has some great features, such as being able to pick blocks, as well as restock items in your inventory. For now, our range is going to be a little limited, and we'll also get into some flux networks. That way we have an easy way to charge our terminal. We'll just make some flux dust by crushing some obsidian on some redstone. And with that, we have a flux controller to enable wireless charging. We'll just need to place that anywhere and link it to a network. And don't forget to activate the charging. And in order to supply our network, we'll add a flux plug to our reactor. Let's also disconnect it from our current network, and then start piping it back in. That way it doesn't create a loop. And in order to do autocrafting, we're going to need a pattern terminal. We'll use this to tell our network how to make different items. And for AE2 autocrafting, we're going to need to make some co-processing units, as well as some storage units. We'll also need to make some matter balls inside a matter condenser. We'll just pipe in some water as our input. Now we can make some crafting units with storage parts. which we'll place down in order to allow autocrafting. And that's when I hear the worst noise in Minecraft. What a lovely feature the phantoms are. Anybody who thinks the phantoms are a good idea, you're just not a real person. It's so sad that the Mega Torch does not stop these. Now we're just going to need some pattern providers to finally set up some autocrafting. Unfortunately, it seems at this point we've ran out of planks. So let's make a little area that I'll use in the future for some crops. And for now, use it to plant some trees. Now we can craft up a crystal assembler, which is used to craft a bunch of AE2 recipes. Now we'll just set up some power in the back, and add these machines to some pattern providers. Just make sure that the machines are outputting into the provider. And let's go ahead and move our reaction chamber over as well. Now we can use that extra silicon press from earlier to make a concurrent press, which we'll add back into the assembler to make a circuit slicer. Another machine that we'll add to our pattern providers. Now we're just going to need to teach our system a bunch of recipes for each of the machines. And for regular vanilla crafting, we'll use some molecular assemblers. And be sure to give them all acceleration cards. And let's actually move this one to the back for easier access to the pattern provider. Now just be sure to add the correct patterns for each machine. Let's do a quick detour and pour some molten ancient debris into some sand. That way we can get some ancient debris Geores going. Let's make quite a few of these, as they're a little less efficient than a normal Geore. And before we can finish our auto crafting, we'll want to make a furnace for some patterns. And to do that, we'll first pour some molten steel on a stick for our rod template. Then we'll add in some blaze powder we've been getting from Sieving, and pour them into the template to start making some blaze rods. Now we can craft an obsidian furnace, which we'll upgrade in a little bit. Let's also add in all our Geores for ancient debris. We should now be able to make some extended pattern providers, which is great for storing a lot of patterns, something we'll definitely need for all the basic crafting. Now let's craft up a few more growth accelerators to add to our Geores. We can also craft up some wireless connectors now, which is great for getting access to our system without a bunch of cables. We'll just place them directly on the controller, that way each one can give off 32 channels. Now we can finally move all our stuff around without having to worry about cables or channels. So let's grab all our machines and head on over. And with everything sorted, it's now time to make a bunch of different recipes. But mainly we want to make some stack upgrades. As you may be able to notice in the background, our storage is overfilling a little bit. Luckily, nothing a couple stack upgrades can't fix. Now we're going to set up an extended interface for our furnace. That way we can automatically smelt any items we set in it. We'll also want to use some pipes, as the auto input and output of the furnace is not quite fast enough. For now, let's just automatically smelt all the ores we have. And now that we have ancient debris going, we can finally start auto-crafting some directional growth accelerators. These force the crystals to grow in a certain direction, as well as drastically increases their growth rate. And now that we have those going, let's make a bunch of different Geores. To make the star, we'll need well over 600,000 gold and iron, so we'll need at least 4 or 5 of those Geores, which should be good enough when run for a couple hours. Now let's keep on expanding our Geore farm. There's a ton of Geores that we're going to need, but for now let's add some quartz, that way we don't have to sieve any more netherrack. We can also make an atomic reconstructor, which will allow us to quickly convert some sand into some soul sand. We can then use that soul sand to upgrade our furnace into netherite, which is especially needed now that we have a ton of Geore shards that need to be smelted. So let's just add all those to the extended interface. Now we're going to need some animals, So let's grab a market and plop that down to summon our boy. We'll trade him some diamonds for some cow eggs, as well as quite a few squid eggs and some chicken eggs. Now we need to create a little hole for our cow, which we'll be using this cow to make some slime. All we need to do is get some milk buckets and add it to some water. We'll be using this slime for some conveyor belts in just a little bit. We also want to make a jetpack, which we'll upgrade quite a few times. But unfortunately, before I could finish upgrading it, I ran out of redstone. No worries, a gold jetpack is good enough for now. Although unfortunately it does mean that we need to make some more dust. That way we can get enough redstone to make a couple Geores. And now we don't have to worry about redstone anymore. Just be sure to add it to the furnace. Anyways, we were making some conveyor belts, and never mind. I guess we're making some Mekanism machines now. Because why would we ever stay on the same task? This is clearly more efficient. Anyways, we're going to set up some infusers, which also means we're going to make some coal Geores, as our infusers are going to use a lot of coal. Now we'll just have to add a bunch of Mekanism recipes into the machines. I was feeling a bit lazy, so I'll ignore the infusion part of the recipe, and I'll just keep each infuser full of its respective infusing type. And to do that, we'll just simply pipe it all in, using an interface, and then we'll just make sure the interface keeps them stocked up. And now that we've got the autocrafting set up, we can start upgrading all our machines to the max level. It's at this point that I start to realize that my power is running pretty low, which we can quickly fix by making sure our reactor is full of uranium. That way it'll produce the maximum amount of power. Although after looking at the power for a little bit, we're definitely going to need to upgrade our power generation soon. But for now, we're barely holding steady. Anyways, I was going to make a mob farm, so let's go ahead and kill some chickens for some feathers. Let's then use those feathers to make an angel block, as well as add some recipes from mob grinding utilities. Now we'll just head out into the void a little bit away from the base, and this is where we'll set up our mob farm. The first thing we're going to need to do is set up our conveyors, which can be a little tricky at first, but eventually I got them all going in the correct direction. We're then going to need any kind of solid block, that way we can attach a lever to it to send a redstone signal through. And since our jetpack isn't maxed out, we're slowly falling down. But now that we have a lever on this thing, we'll place a mob masher on top. Then we'll be sure to add some upgrades to it. And now we can easily expand the platform using a building stick. Luckily, they all keep the direction that they were heading in. Now we're going to need to set up some kind of collection system. So let's put an item collector on a chest, which will make the chest as large as possible, as there's going to be a lot of unique items. And now let's upgrade our jetpack, since slowly floating down is getting very annoying. Our automatic sieve is getting us plenty of Automodium from some sand, so let's use some to upgrade our furnace. This means our furnace is now smelting 16 items at a time, which also makes it more energy efficient. And now that our mob farm is set up, we can create some gateways in order to start spawning some mobs on it. Let's also connect this chest up to our ME system. Now having a look in the chest, we definitely need some stack upgrades. So let's toss them in, and now our chest is nearly good to go. The final reward for killing a gateway is a lot of dungeon loot, and I mean a lot. But this is actually great, as we're going to need to equip an apotheosis gear for each slot. By doing this, we unlock the tier that allows mobs to drop rare items. Let's now go ahead and use that essence to start making some seeds. This mod pack removes a lot of the seeds compared to other mod packs, but there are still a couple that we want to make. So let's make a harvester, as well as a silent gear hoe, which will never break in the harvester. Now it's time to use that land that we were making earlier. We'll just place that harvester in the ground, which we will waterlog in order to keep our crops healthy. Finally, we're going to put some growth accelerators down, that way we can quickly grow our plants. Just be sure to power them all with some cables. Now let's plant some inferium seeds, that way we can get our inferium going. We can also use some inferium on the soil to turn it into an inferium farmland. This will give us a 20% chance every time our crop grows to give us some extra seeds. For the other farmland, let's give it some red fertilizer so that way it grows as quickly as possible. Then all we have to do is keep spreading our seed. We'll also want to put some industrial hemp fiber down, that way we can grow infinite string. Now that we have some inferium going, let's set up an infusion altar. We'll use this to craft some new seeds. We'll also want to connect our chest into our storage system. Just make sure it's set to extract only, that way we won't get random junk in this chest. And then be sure to link up your wireless connectors. Then in order to get some prosperity shards, we'll need to sift through some soul sand. With those, we can make a seed base, and then make the few seeds that we'll need. First up, we're going to make a wood seed, that way we don't have to chop down trees anymore. Let's place that one on our inferium land, that way we can start duplicating the seed. We'll end up needing about 60,000 wood at the end, so let's plant a few of these. We're also going to need about 60,000 dirt, so let's make some dirt seeds as well. Next up, we're going to want to make some nature seeds, which means we'll have to grow a few pumpkins. We'll also need to upgrade our essence into Prudentium, since this is a tier 2 seed. We're not going to need too much nature essence, so we'll only need to plant one of those. And that's all the seeds we'll need for now, so let's get working on our next project, which is going to be a giant reactor. These reinforced reactors can get quite expensive, but we are going to need a lot of power generation soon, so it'll be worth it. This reactor is going to take all the same parts as the basic reactor, the only difference being that it's made out of more expensive components. So let's go ahead and place our power port, our controller, and our solid access port. We'll then connect our system up to this reactor, that way we can start feeding it a bunch of uranium. Let's just be sure to upgrade our pipe, as this reactor is going to be able to hold thousands of uranium. Now let's actually finish the reactor. We'll need to fill it up with some fuel rods. The checkerboard pattern is the most efficient, but I found that it doesn't matter too much. Although the inside of a reactor is not quite suitable for some visitors, so let's get rid of these guys. Oh wait, this guy's pants are kind of cool. Don't mind if I take those. Okay, bye. Anyways, now that the invasive species is gone, we can finally start filling up our reactor. We'll just need to wait a second to make some more rods. And in the meantime, let's set up a builder with a fluid placing card. That way we can fill our reactor with water after we're done filling it with rods. This will allow our reactor to make about 15% more power, which isn't a lot, but it all adds up. Now that the rest of our fuel rods are made, we can place them all in. Then we'll cap them off with some control rods. Now the final step is just to fill in all the gaps. And now our reactor is complete, so we can turn it on to start making tons of FE a tick. Let's just add on a flex plug, that way we can start adding the power into our network. We're going to need to make some antimatter later, so a good way to deal with that is by storing a lot of power. The easiest power bank I could find was the power storage from Applied Flux. This will allow us to store power in our ME system. All we'll have to do is send any extra power we're making into a flux accessor. This is done pretty easily by just setting our priority to -1. And don't forget to bypass the basic limit. Now we can easily see how much power we have stored. There's still a few more Geores that we're going to need to make, but we want to make sure that none of our metals start mixing, so let's go ahead and clear out our smeltery, simply by pouring all the liquids into a trash can. Now we can go ahead and start making some new Geores, such as lead, silver, some tin, a couple of copper Geores, a few more uranium Geores, some aluminum, as well as a couple emerald and diamond Geores. Now we're just going to place them all into our farm. We'll also use some boosted growth accelerators, that way everything is running super fast. And we'll also expand the farm out just a little bit, that way we can fit in all our new Geores. We also are going to need some platinum, so let's go ahead and grab some ore. And would you look at that, we gotta crush some more deep slate. I told you this wasn't over. I'd also like to note that I received 54 deep slate and didn't get a single one. These are basically the same odds as uranium, so I don't know what's up. But the grind don't stop. So let's crush a little more deep slate and hope this is enough. Which, luckily, it turned out to be just enough. Now we can just add those to our smelter, and eventually turn it into a Geore for our farm. And finally, let's add some lapis to our farm. We'll make some button amethysts, which we'll use for time crystals in a little bit. But for now, they can just sit in storage. And let's not forget to add our Geores into our furnace. Heading back over to the farm, we're going to need to grab a couple gems. We'll then crush those gems under an anvil to get some gem dust. With that dust, we can make a salvaging table, which we're going to hook up into our farm so that way we can automatically salvage any items we get. We're hoping to salvage some rare items, that way we can get some rare gem shards, which we'll need in a minute. Looks like we got a few, so let's use them to make some templates, and then we can use those to make some netherite templates. Then we'll use a netherite template to make some Unobtainium upgrades. And let's make a couple extra copies, just in case. Now we're going to want to make an Unobtainium sword, as well as an Unobtainium pickaxe. Let's grab some obsidian and head into the Nether. The Nether is also a skyblock island, but by checking our map we can see the Nether fortress spawn nearby. So let's start heading over in that direction. At the Nether fortress, we're just looking for some wither skeletons. We'll start killing a few in order to get some wither skull fragments, which we'll need 9 of in order to make a skull. Some of these wither skeletons have bows, which they kinda hurt. But no worries, we have the /back command, and I'm falling into the void. Luckily we have the Forgiving Void mod, which means we'll just start falling down from the sky. Although, it still means we're going to take some fall damage. And being low on health is a little bit of an issue. Especially when the wither skeletons start spawn camping you. Luckily we make it back home with enough fragments to make a skull. Let's then use that skull to make a gateway, which will spawn a bunch of wither skeletons over on our mob grinder. And now that we have some skulls going, we're going to start getting into some hostile neural networks. In order to train our data model, we're going to need to kill a couple withers. So let's make a little wither-proof cage for him. Now all we have to do is summon and kill 6 different withers. And we'll also need to specify our model real quick. Now enjoy this little montage of me killing some withers. Well, that was sure fun. Now that we have a basic wither model, we'll need to set up a simulation chamber and a loot fabricator. And after making a very beautiful spaghetti pipe system, we're going to need to tell our system to keep supplying this with some prediction matrices. Now our simulation chamber will slowly make some wither predictions. And I also fixed up the pipes a little bit. But once we finally make a wither prediction, we can head into the loot fabricator to make sure it's always going to make some nether stars. Next up, we're going to need a bit of dye, so let's make some dye seeds so that way we don't have to worry about it. We only need one of these, so no need to duplicate it. Just plant it in any open space. We're now going to start needing some of those nether stars, so let's set up some autocrafting for a tier 3 extended crafter. We'll use this to make some crystalline ingots. We're also going to want to set up an ender crafter, which will need a bunch of ender alternators around it in order to speed up its crafting rate. And this ender crafter is going to be used to make some vibranium with those crystalline ingots. I then realized I gotta move this pattern provider, as we can't open the chest with it on top of it. We're then going to manually craft up a uranite Geore using this ender crafter. We don't really need to make any uranite, but we will need the Geore crystals in order to make some vibranium. So let's add that to our farm, and make sure we have plenty of growth accelerators. Our farm is getting pretty large now, so let's infuse our builder so that way it can go at max speed. This will make sure that all the Geores are mined as fast as possible. Now we can use those crystalline ingots to make sure our extended crafters are automatic. We'll just need to set the recipe inside of them, as well as give them some power. Now with that set up, we can start making a bunch of vibranium. Let's just make sure that our ender crafter is upgraded to be automatic as well. Then we'll do the same thing and set its recipe inside. And with that working, we can then just leave it going for a little while. We're also going to be able to upgrade all our meshes, now that we have a netherite template. This will allow us to get a bunch of drops from the deep dark from endstone. So let's have our system go through a bit of endstone for a bit. Next up, we'll do some dimension hopping, so let's set up a waystone at our home. We can also head over to the nether to set up a waystone there. And now that we have some nether stars, let's make a dimensional card. That way we can access our ME system from any dimension. The next big thing on our list is going to be a fission reactor. So let's go ahead and add a bunch of recipes into our system. And let's make an osmium Geore for good measure. And did I say I was making a fission reactor? Because clearly we need to make a latex unit, as well as some fluid extractors. Gotta keep you on your toes. Clearly not an ADHD thing. These fluid extractors work well with acacia logs, so let's have those go in there. We can also set the recipe in order to make some rubber. Now we'll want to store some latex from these fluid extractors, so let's put down a tank and add a storage bus to it. Let's also make sure that our latex is getting extracted into the tank. Now that we have some latex going, we can make a dissolution chamber, which we'll need to give some power. So let's just grab from here and snake it all around. Cause sure, why not? With that, we can now make a mob slaughter factory, allowing us to start making some pink slime. We'll also want to make a couple add-ons for it. Now let's shove it into our mob grinder, and have it start exporting the pink slime into a tank. And let's add a storage bus to that tank so we can access the pink slime. Now whenever we have mobs in our grinder, we'll chop up at least a few of them and start converting them into pink slime. We don't quite need that yet, but it's nice to have, so that way it'll start building up over time. Now we can get over to the fission reactor. This is built pretty similar to the extreme reactor. It'll just be made up from some mechanism parts. Although in this reactor, you definitely want to use the checkerboard pattern. Otherwise, you might have some issues with some heat and radiation. This reactor also has its control rods covered by the roof. And we know we've made it correctly once we get a little redstone flash. Now we'll just add a couple ports. That way we can fill it with some water and fuel, as well as export our product. We're also going to want to start sifting some moss blocks. That way we can get a mineral tree. Let's grow that mineral tree for some mineral logs. That way we can get started on some integrated dynamics. We'll take those logs and add them into our smelter, which over time will turn into crystallized mineral. Now it's time to make fissile fuel, which is basically a long chain of a couple ingredients. So let's make a little tower that will make everything we need. We'll just need to supply it with 4 different items. So let's wirelessly connect our storage setup here. In our interface, we're going to need to add some sulfur. We'll need to add some biofuel. We'll request some fluorite. And finally, we'll need some yellow uranium cakes. In the backside of our tower, we'll need to provide some water into a couple machines. Now let's go ahead and pipe those items into machines. We'll use some pipes with some filters to make sure they're going into the right spots. Now we'll just need to configure all the machines to be the correct inputs and outputs. Last but not least, we'll add some upgrades to all the machines. The restock feature is actually great for all these upgrades, as we'll be able to hold all our upgrades in one item slot. And now that we're making fissile fuel, let's pipe it out of the machine and into our fission reactor. Now we're going to need to start providing water into our reactor. So let's grab that mineral that we had cooking earlier. We'll then use it to make a fluid interface, as well as a fluid importer. As far as I can tell, this is the only way we're going to be able to supply enough water into this machine. So let's put a fluid importer on the sink, and a fluid interface on our fusion reactor. Then we'll need to connect them up with a cable, and finally use a variable card. That way we can set the input rate to the max integer. And now that we have our water going in, we can set our burn rate up to 300, which will be plenty fast enough to make 2 antimatter in the next few hours. Now we're going to take the nuclear waste that we're producing, and we'll store a good chunk of it in some pressurized tubes. But first, let's take a nap because these phantoms are super annoying. We'll then use 2 different machines to process nuclear waste into polonium and plutonium. And we'll also want to turn those into pellets with some pressurized reaction chambers. These are going to create some radioactive waste that we don't want, but we won't be making too much of it, so we can just store a bunch of it in some tubes. Now we'll just need to add some water to each reaction chamber. And finally, we'll use some fluorite dust to convert it into pellets. We'll then be storing some excess polonium on the side. So let's do the same tube method. With all that going, we now have everything we need to make an SPS machine. This machine will turn our excess polonium into antimatter, although it will use a ton of power, so let's connect up our power that we've been storing in our ME system. And by placing down extra cables, we can increase the amount of power that gets used. Next up on the list, we're going to make a Vibranium upgrade, which we're going to then use on our pickaxe to make a Vibranium pickaxe. Now we'll want to make an Ender IO enchanter. That way we can start making some enchanted books. We'll just need some emeralds and lapis in order to make some Fortune 3 books. And if we run out of experience, we can just grab whatever's been stored in the furnace. Now we can make the last few fortune books that we need in order to combine them all into Fortune 5. And we'll also make an Efficiency 5 book. We've also got a monster spawner as a loot drop from our gateway, so let's go ahead and set that up in our mob grinder. We can use a bunch of different items on it to give it special properties, such as spawning more mobs at a faster rate, as well as making them quiet, giving extra drops, and having no AI. Let's also turn off light requirements so we can get most mobs to spawn. We then want the spawner to be a witch spawner, so the easiest way to get some witches is to fail a gateway. In the meantime, let's make an alloy smelter, as we're going to want to capture these witches inside some vials. We're just going to need some fused quartz as well as some solarium. And now that we have our vials, let's go ahead and find those witches. We're also going to swab them in order to make a spawn egg. And by hooking up an XP tank into our storage system, we can easily get some XP buckets. Now let's use those to craft up some chicken feed, which we'll feed to some chickens in order to get some spawn eggs.
Happy birthday, Taco! Happy birthday, Taco!
Now we just need to finish setting up our spawner, and give it a redstone signal in order to turn it on. These witches are going to give us a ton of redstone as well as glowstone, as well as give us a consistent supply of pink slime. Let's just be sure to add a void upgrade to our chest, and have it void any overflowing items. But since we'll need over 600,000 redstone, let's make sure it doesn't void those. Now we're going to head over to the end soon, but first we're going to need some eggs. So while we wait for that, let's set up Autocrafting for the power mod. And let's just say that this mod has quite a few recipes that need to be taught. We can then set up a pattern provider into an energizer orb, and make sure the pattern provider only pushes ingredients out one at a time. Then we just need the orb to get charged with some power, which will come from some energizing rods. And now that our chickens have laid some eggs, we can make an end cake. So let's place that down and get our waystones ready, because we're about to head into the end. Unlike the Nether and the overworld, the end is just normal, so we don't have to worry about any weird skyblock shenanigans. We're then going to need to kill an ender dragon, so let's get a power 5 book for a bow. We need to kill the dragon eventually, but the main goal here is just to get some quick dragon's breath. Upgrade the goo. Upgrade the goo again. Upgrade the goo again. I have big boy goo. We're now going to use this big boy goo in order to make some time crystals. Let's just use this bunny amethyst that we had earlier. Normally I'd do some big swapper setup to make this all automatic, but we don't need too many time crystals, so I'm just going to do it manually. We'll just need to give the time crystals time in each dimension. And once they reach the end, they'll start making some time crystals. And while those are growing, let's get some damage on the dragon. Thank you, thank you. These crystals don't last forever though, so let's just package them up whenever they run out. And we'll repeat the process. No. And we'll get some big damage on the dragon whenever it perches. And using our bow, we can finish off the first dragon. Each dragon kill will give us a dragon heart, which we'll need for later. We can then use any extra time crystals we have for a time wand, which we'll need to fill up with some time fluid, which is crafted with some polymorphic catalysts and some time crystals. Next up, let's make some items to prepare for the Chaos Dragon. The big thing here is we're going to need 2 swappers, as well as a stasis chamber and a mob crusher. And while we're in the end, we'll need to train up an enderman model. Now it's time to head out into the outer end islands. Here we're going to be looking for some unobtainium ore, as well as start flying towards 10,000 blocks in any direction. We'll also make an Eclipse Gate wand from just higher things. This will give us a little teleport, as well as to make blocks temporarily invisible. Now comes the fun part of flying all the way over to 10,000 blocks, and then having to wait 5 minutes just for the chunks to load. Luckily our in-game time isn't moving, so this isn't much of a penalty for us. But just to be clear, it also means that none of our other machines are working, so the game is essentially paused until it loads. But after that long wait, we finally reached the Chaos Guardian Island. The dragon luckily won't spawn until we hit the ground, so let's set up a waypoint a little bit further away. Now it's time to cheese the dragon. Let's set up a stasis chamber where the dragon's going to spawn, and let's give the stasis chamber a speed add-on, just to make sure it doesn't miss the dragon. Now we can head down to the floor to spawn it in. While we wait for that to spawn in, let's head to the ship down below to grab this dragon head. And if we take a peek at our little stasis chamber, we'll see that we've captured the dragon. But in order to damage the dragon, we're going to first need to take care of these crystals. Normally the crystals need to be hit by the Chaos Guardian, and then they become weak enough to be able to hit. But by using a little bit of swapper technology, we can just move the crystal out of its original place, and trick the game into thinking we broke it. Unfortunately, I messed up the first one, and accidentally stuck the crystal inside my swapper. Well, that's not ideal. But it's not that big of a deal. Let's just make another swapper to replace it. And we'll be sure to set the swapper to make sure it doesn't place it inside itself. Now all we need to do is go into each individual crystal, and start swapping them out of their place to unlock the dragon. And with the final crystal now technically destroyed, the dragon is able to take damage. But as you can see, the dragon has a lot of shield health. But that's not to worry. We can kill it with a crusher, which doesn't technically kill the dragon, at least not in the sense that allows us to get our crystals at the end. But what it will do is when the dragon respawns, it will no longer have all its shield health. Then for us to damage the dragon, we're going to want to make some reinforced redstone blocks. Whoops. Then we'll place those blocks where the dragon spawns, as well as a couple mob mashers to damage the dragon. Now we can turn off our crusher and wait for the dragon to respawn. And just like that, the dragon is going to start taking damage and eventually die. Once it's finally dead, we'll want to break that stasis chamber and allow it to float down to the bottom. This will now unlock the chaos crystals that are located underneath the island. The chaos crystals cannot be mined until the dragon is killed, so that means we killed the dragon. Now let's use our Eclipse wand to get down into the crystal area. Then we can mine up the crystal. But we will need to kill another chaos dragon for all the recipes we'll need. That means it's time to head off 10,000 blocks in another direction. And while we head off in that direction, let's keep an eye out for unobtainium ore. To make the star, we'll need about 55 pieces. So let's hope our fortune's pretty good. Although I was not having very much luck finding any of this. But there is a fun little trick, in that the Eclipse wand is not able to temporarily make it invisible. Just be careful if the normal blocks are reappearing on you. My luck was so bad that I eventually ended up at the next Chaos Guardian before I could even get all the ore. And weirdly enough, this Chaos Guardian arena also had an end city in it, just like the last one. And by now you should know the drill. Let's set up that stasis chamber to trap the dragon, and then we'll go through and get rid of all the crystals. And now that the crystals are gone, let's crush up that dragon, and then set up the kill chamber for it. And once the dragon is dead, let's get rid of that stasis chamber. Then we can head down to the Chaos Crystal and start mining it. And before we head back, we'll need to mine up just a little bit more Unobtainium. Now let's upgrade the rods we were using for some power crafting. That way we can quickly craft all the power items we'll need. We'll also need to capture a zombie and an aerial pearl, so let's just use a quick gate for that. And that'll be all the things we'll need to craft for power. Next up on the list is going to be some bees. We'll complete a bunch of various quests in order to get some honeycombs, and if we're lucky, won't need to set up some regular bees. So let's smelt a couple in the foundry, that way we can make a honey bottle, which will unlock more quests for honeycombs. We'll then need an advanced beehive, as well as an expansion box. Then we'll put a feeding slab down below for the items the bees use to pollinate with. We didn't get lucky enough on the quests, so we'll need some regular bees in order to make a couple extra honeycombs. While those are doing their thing, let's head over to the end, where we'll use this obsidian nest to start summoning some Draconic Bees. We'll also need a few more dragon hearts, so let's summon another dragon. And of course the best method to kill a dragon is clear to fly into its face and smack it a bunch. We'll need to summon one more. And while that's going, let's set up an extractor to start duplicating some dragon eggs. Let's now check it back in with our bees, and we've got almost enough honeycombs. We just need enough to make a simulation upgrade. We want more. Luckily, it didn't take too long for our final honeycomb. And now that we have the simulation upgrade, we can toss our Draconic Bees into the nest, and we're also able to now use our time wand to speed up the bees. The next mod we're going to get into is occultism. We'll need some demon dream seeds, and we'll grow some of those into some demon fruit. And by lighting some on fire, we'll make some spirit fire, which we'll use to craft up a bunch of occultism items. We can also use it to convert some saplings into occultism saplings, which can only be mined when you're high on the demon dream fruit. Now that we have the basics, we can start making some chalks and rituals. Our first ritual will be to summon a simple crusher, which will allow us to craft a couple new items. We'll place these sacrificial bowls all next to each other and build the rituals around them. That way we can make all the recipes right here. The first thing we're going to have our crusher do is crush up some endstone. Then we're going to do a little detour, and let's make a reprocessor from extreme reactors. We'll use this to make some plutonium, which we'll need some in a little bit. We'll need to sift through a tiny bit more deep slate, and this time inside a flint mesh. That way we can get some calcite. Luckily we only need a few of them, which we'll give to our crusher. Now we'll need to make a second ritual, and this one is going to require some purple chalk, which is what we'll use the crushed endstone to make. Finally, we'll give our crusher some plutonium, which we'll use in another mod. This ritual is going to need some bottles of enchanting, so let's add that recipe to a dissolution chamber. This ritual will give us the last component we need to make our lime chalk. Then we'll need to make a simple soul gem using the same ritual. Finally, we'll craft our last two chalks of light gray and lime. Now we just have to set up our final ritual. And with this final ritual, we'll be able to make the soul gem needed to craft the star. Checking back up on the bees, we now have a lot of draconic cones, which we'll put through the centrifuge. Now for the star, we're going to need a bunch of different singularities, and each singularity takes 25,000 items to make. So let's add all of those into our autocrafting. Then we'll make a quantum compressor, which will be used to craft all the singularities. We'll also set up a tier 4 ultimate crafter, which will be used for the star and the ultimate catalyst. Now let's just ask our system to make an ultimate catalyst. And the only thing missing is some nickel, which isn't actually missing, we just need to fix one of our recipes to use the correct type of nickel. Now we have everything we need to craft up the singularity. We just need to upgrade our CPUs to be able to handle such a big craft. And with those going, we can set up the recipes for Draconic crafting. We'll just push all our items into a chest, and then round robin distribute them into all these injectors. Oh my gosh, I need to move it back one. And after fixing that annoying mistake, our Draconic crafting is just about set up. But before we can make our big crafts, we're going to need to upgrade our Draconic injectors quite a few times. We'll just make them about 4 at a time, and slowly replace the ones that we're using. Our dragon hearts are going to be used to make some awakened draconian blocks. Which will be used to upgrade the injectors into the next tier. Then, last but not least, we'll upgrade our injectors into the final tier. And with all the injectors upgraded, we can now make a Draconic Reactor core, as well as a Chaotic core. That's Draconic Evolution complete, so let's now move into Orch Tech. This one is pretty simple. The only weird thing is that they need some core blocks in order to be formed. Then otherwise we can treat them just like normal machines. We've got the assembler set up, and let's also set up a centrifuge. We'll also craft up a fluid add-on for the centrifuge, which will unlock a couple more recipes for us. We'll also set up autocrafting with the primitive smelter, since we'll need this to make an ore tech item. We'll then need to pipe water into our centrifuge, as it's not a very big fan of accepting water from our pattern provider. No worries, we'll just remove the water from a few of the patterns that we made. Last up, we'll need to make an atomic forge, which will get its own pattern provider. And this machine doesn't take energy directly from a power source, so we'll have to make an enduric laser in order to give it power. Although placing the enduric laser here is actually an issue, as it's going to start stealing some items from our pattern provider. But after some recipes failed for a little bit, it didn't take too long to figure out that this guy was the culprit. No worries, we'll just move him over. Then finally we'll need a target designator, that way we can tell the enduric laser where to shoot its power. Now we just add our last few recipes into the atomic forge, and we're all set with the ore tech after we autocraft the items. You'll notice here that this is where our plutonium dust is getting used. Next up on the list is some entangled singularities, which we'll get by just blowing up some singularities with some ender pearls. We're going to need some phantom membranes now, which can be easily crafted with the fan. We'll just need to replace our lava with the dragon head. Then we'll just blow some dragon breath on some leather. Let's check over on our antimatter, and it looks like we made all 2 that we need. We'll now quickly set up a thermal evaporation plant, that way we can start making some lithium dust. Unfortunately, this is where a tragic accident occurred. No! Yeah, oh well, he served his purpose. Now let's set up our second thermal evaporation plant, that way we can turn our brine into lithium. Let's also use a resistive heater on both of these, that way we know they're running at max speed. Now we'll just need to turn our liquid lithium into a gas, and then crystallize that into some dust. We're also going to need a milk of wither for some ether gas, so let's just set that up real quick. We'll just need a fluid laser base on a wither, which will be powered with some laser drills. And inside the laser base, we'll just need to add a purple lens. Next on our list is to do some actual additions crafting, which will need an empower as well as some display stands. Then all we have to do is power the display stands, and put in recipes as we need them. We're going to need some empowered diamantine crystals, which we'll quickly craft up using the block recipe. We'll also need to crystallize 1 canola seed, and empower it with some other canola seeds. Now heading over to Ender IO, we'll need some capacitors, which we'll use to make a capacitor bank. We then need a slice and splice, which we'll use to make a Z-Logic controller. But first we need to give the machine a capacitor, which we luckily have one from a mob drop. Now we can craft a cell binder, which we'll use to make some sentient enders. But first we need to use the slice and spice to make some ender resonators. We'll need to give this machine some XP, and while that's going, let's craft up the player interface, which will use those diamantine crystals we just made. Now we'll use those witches that we captured earlier, and combine with the resonant enders in order to turn them into sentient enders. Next up, let's use some simple dire machines in order to craft up an Eclipse Ember block. We'll have one keeping our goo active, as well as one to place blocks and one to break blocks. Now all we have to do is start feeding it some blocks of coal. We'll then compress whatever we get, and repeat the cycle until we get some Eclipse Ender. Now it's time to get into some Ars Nouveau. This one's pretty simple. We just need to use a summon tablet with each of the Wilden drops placed into it in order to summon the boss. But I accidentally forgot to turn off the slaughter factory, so let's actually go down there and turn that off. Now we'll just need to summon him again, and this time we'll have to kill him. And by kill him, I mean shove him into some spikes until he dies. And now that we have the Wilden Tribute, we'll just need to craft it with a couple different items in order to craft a summoning focus, which is all we're going to need from Ars in order to make the star. Let's use those phantom membranes from earlier to craft some Moondabar dust, which we'll use to make a Diorama block. We're going to need a 7x compressed cobblestone, and the easiest way to get that is by using an infinite cobblestone drive and forcing a ton of cobblestone into a compacting chest. With that going, let's head over to the Nether, where we're going to try and get a gas to spawn. So let's actually make a platform in the Soul Sand Valley to better increase our odds. And now that one spawned, we're going to want to hit it with a syringe a bunch to fill it up. No! No. And of course I accidentally kill it before I can fill the syringe. Now it seems like the mob cap is all filled up, so I know the perfect way to clear up the mob cap. And would you look at that? It worked like a charm. And now that the syringe is filled, we can use it to craft a flying module. Luckily I knew the module needed a gas to be in it, which weirdly JEI doesn't show you, but it is needed for the recipe. Now we'll kill off a couple extra slimes to make some fertile essence, which we'll be using to make some witherless roses. And after checking the recipes, we actually can make the dragon soul already. Now we're going to need to do a ton of microcrafting in order to slowly convert our essence up the chain until we can finally make a master infusion crystal. And with that made, we'll just make a bunch of insanium, which we need to make an insanium coal block. Now let's double up all that unobtainium we got with a hammer, and then throw it into our furnace. And with those smelted up, we can now make a gravitational modulation unit. Then we're going to dive into a little bit of create, of course, where we'll craft up a couple items in order to make a deployer. We'll then use that deployer on a gold sheet with 3 different rotating items until we finally get a precision matrix, which we'll need in order to craft a mechanical arm. We're going to need an unobtainium furnace in a little bit, so we might as well upgrade our current furnace all the way. Now let's grab a single wither prediction before it gets used, and use that to craft a wither compass. We're also now able to make a Nexium emitter, as well as the improbable probability device. We can technically make the philosopher's fuel, but let's use that as the last item in case we need our furnace. Now let's add in that star recipe, which doesn't include 2 major pieces, just to see what else we're missing. We're missing all the mods blocks, so let's craft up a bunch of those. And since it said we're missing some lead, let's go ahead and make a bunch of lead geores. I don't realize it until it's too late, but we actually don't need any more lead, as the recipe is trying to make another ultimate singularity, but we already have one, it just needs to be manually crafted. The last big thing to make is the miniature black hole. This is where we need nearly 600,000 each of redstone, gold, and iron, and all of these items are just going to be compressed. But by making a pattern with some random item as the output, we can manually request everything to be sent into a chest all at once. All we need to do is add the patterns to a pattern provider, and make sure that the connected chest has a compacting upgrade. But when I go to craft it, it doesn't actually go through, which seems a little weird at first. So I try reducing the recipe down, just to see if that's somehow an issue. So let's go ahead and set this crafter to only make items for me, and let's try the recipe out one more time. And yet again, it did not work. So at this point, I'm very confused, because in my test world, it worked perfectly. Let's just grab that cobblestone that we need, as well as 2 5x cobblestones, which we'll use to make 5x gravel and sand. I then test with a larger chest, with some stack upgrades in case it somehow isn't able to push that many items. And then we test it again, only for it to just fail. So I go through the chest, maybe it's some kind of weird setting that's blocking it, I'm just not sure what's going on. I even tried upgrading the pattern provider in case it somehow needed to be an extended pattern provider, which doesn't make any sense, but might as well try it. And guess what? That one doesn't work. Running out of options, I think back to my old setup, and the only thing that was different was that I had some dense energy cells. So let's add a couple of those to our system and see if that works. Aha! So we actually found out the issue. Later researching it, it makes much more sense, but it is not very well documented in the latest versions of AE2. Basically, our ME system has a total amount of power, not including the power in the drive, and whenever adding or removing items from your storage, it costs 1 energy per item. This is only actually documented in the Applied Energistics 1 documentation, which you can see here. So basically, we just didn't have enough power in our system to be able to push that many items. But now we have it, so we have all our compressed items ready. Anyways, with that rant over, we were able to make our pulsating black hole, and now we'll have to go ahead and manually craft that ultimate singularity. Now let's go try and craft that star, and it turns out we have everything that we need. So let's push everything into that chest, and speed up the process of making this last singularity. And it looks like it pushed all of our items into our crafter, other than that black hole that we just made. And now our final step is to grab our furnace to craft our last item. And with that crafted up, we now have everything we need to make the star. So let's go ahead and do it. Time. And that is it, guys. We have successfully crafted the All the Mods star in All the Mods 10 to the Sky in 10 hours and 11 minutes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry for it being a little while from my last post. I'll have another speedrun video out in the next week or two, and that one's going to be even more impressive than this. I also just set up some channel memberships, which will give you exclusive access into my Discord. Check out the join button to see all the perks you can get for becoming a member. As an added bonus, the first person to comment on something I hid in this video will get a free month of channel membership. Just note that there might be a few things I need to still add, and I'm going on a trip for a little bit, but everything should be set up and ready to go within the next week. And that's going to do it for this video, so see you in the next one.